Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I'm Beth. Today we're going to be setting up my reading journal for 2025. I filmed this over a couple of days because it takes this one a little while to come together. Let's go ahead and throw it back to Beth from the past. For this setup, I am relying heavily on this box of celestial washi tapes from Libby. I did get it from Amazon and I will link it down in the description box below. As is my usual practice in my reading journals, I have created a splash page or a 2025 cover page. I'm just putting down some washi tape that I can then put that cover page over top of. Since the end pages of the journal also have a silvery, starry pattern on them, we're going to leave that alone. We're not going to washi tape over it, but I am going to put a printable over it. So here are our printables for 2025. What is my theme? My theme for this year is Syfy Sirens. Regular viewers will know that I have been in my sci-fi era throughout 2024. We're just going to carry it into 2025. We will also have a read-along every month. I have picked 12 short stories from female science fiction authors that we are going to read through the course of the year. To add some super extra bling, I have these raised kind of 3D sparkly stars. I got them from Michael's. They're really meant to put on jackets and bling out those sorts of things. But I thought it'd be really fun to use them just here in the cover pages. I don't want to use them inside the journal on those pages because they are raised and they're so bumpy and they'll start messing up with how things write. Then I'm also going over some of the existing stars on the printable with a silver gel pen, again, just to give them a little bit more shine and shimmer. And that is it for the 2025 cover page. I am going to return to this a little bit later and add a fold out. But for now, we're going to move on and glue together this weird page that is connected to the binding. I'm just going to use this regular old glue strip tape runner from Tombow and put those things together before we move on to the next page. And confession time, this next page is one that I've already set up because I needed to test the washi tapes and see what sort of an aesthetic I was going for. Much like my 2024 setup, this is a pocket that I've created that's holding a library card where we're going to write in the stories that we're reading for 2025. You can see I've already decorated all of this, added in some planets and those sorts of things. It also says Station 11, then I've crossed it out and put 12. It says Station 11 because I am using fun science fiction titles for all of my pages this year, and they might only make sense to my brain, but it's my reading journal. It is time to assemble the index. I have some traveler size pages here that I've poached out of another notebook. I've gone ahead and put the alphabet on them because I do like to alphabetize my index. I am also going to use this Ohuhu marker just for highlights. And I wrote on a piece of washi tape and stuck it on here, highlights, so that I can remember that this is the marker that I'm going to use for highlights all the way through the year. Here, I'm highlighting every other line. I'm just freehanding it. I don't have the patience to block off with washi tape or try to use a ruler. I am going to use a ruler to mark off these straight lines. The one on the right will be to mark where I'm going to put the page numbers. I realized that my page numbers in 2024 started and ended all wibbly wobbly and they were out of alignment. This line is going to say, hey, on the other side of this line is where you put the page number. Then I'm adding a little circle like a floating moon to a planet in and around my alphabet areas. This little moon is a loose alphabet challenge. If I read a book that begins with that letter of the alphabet, I'll go ahead and color in that moon. Then it's time to decorate. We're leaning heavily into these celestial washi tapes. I'm going to use a thicker one at the top and a thinner one at the bottom. I also have some stickers that I have printed out or made. There are some generalized space astronaut spaceship stickers that came from Canva. I've also taken some images of some fun science fiction spaceships like the Battlestar Galactica, for the Millennium Falcon. I've peppered those in throughout the setup as well. I have titled my index Manicure, which is a space station. It's a space station that's never existed because I made it up years ago when I was doing blogging. It is an acronym and a pretty fun one if I do say so myself. that stands for Most Amazing Space Station Ever Created for Entirely Useless Reasons. With the index in, we're going to pop back to the beginning and I'm going to add that fold out that I want to add in. I actually wanted to add this before I put down that Syfy Sirens sticker, but we're going to make it work. We'll just use some translucent tape so that it doesn't mess up the whole vibe of the front. What I'm adding to this is two things. One, I want to add a Reads cheat sheet. Reads is my new book reading system. That video launched yesterday. If you haven't watched that yet, go ahead and go check it out. No, it's not going to be for everybody, but it's working for me, so I thought that I would share. The other thing that I'm adding in is a spread I'm calling What's in a Star, and it just tells me from half star to 5-star what a rating means to me so that I have that reference. I wanted to put these two things at the front of the journal where I can flip it out and reference it when I'm writing my own reviews and stuff throughout the course of the year. Of course, I do want the page to look pretty. We're adding in some stickers and some of that washi tape. And then I am titling this page The Force because it is the rule of law that controls everything else that we do in this journal. While I'm decorating, there is a big chunk of space at the very end of my index that I also need to add a little bit of decoration to, just to take up the white space and make it go away. I'm also looking at all of this thinking, I think I need something else in and around this washi tape. We're going to address that as well. Starting with some gold dot stickers. I pulled out some gold dot stickers and I'm going to use them in and around the setup. Here is one of our spaceships that I have printed out, as well as some other sticker iconography that just has books and astronauts and things from Canva. When I picked the green washi tape for the top, I specifically chose a non-matching washi tape for the bottom. And that might bug people. You might want a green on the top and a green on the bottom, but I really wanted that to not match. Then I remembered I had these stickers from Archer and Olive from a long time ago that have these black stars and constellations. They come in handy throughout the setup as well. Honestly, it really started to become a hodgepodge as I grabbed more and more things as we were working along, but that is a-okay. Let's move on to my goals page and my Goodreads challenge page. On the left is my goals page. I'm going to title this page The Prime Directive for any of you other Star Trek fans out there. My goals are a little bit different this year, so let's talk about them. I want to read 365. That just means read every day of the year. I want to read 10 books off of my backlist, which is the next spread that we'll set up. I want to read 12 works of Shakespeare. Fun announcement on that coming soon. And then I want to read 6 Bard adjacent books. So books about Shakespeare, fictional books about Shakespeare, all of those sorts of things. And then I want to complete 5 series. My Goodreads goal, which we're setting up on the right, is to do 60 books in 2025. My goal for 2024 was 54, I think. So I'm adding 6 books to that list. Over here on the right, to fill in when I read those books, I'm just making a bunch of planets of various sizes. We're going to connect them all together, and I will then color them in. To do this, I kept with standard sizes that are on my Helix circle maker here, so I didn't have to change implements multiple times. I'm going to put numbers in the circles from 1 to 60, and the reason that I'm going to do this is because this year I'm also going to add that corresponding number to the index. They'll be not in numerical order. There'll still be in alphabetical order. My first book could be a C or a D and it'll have a 1 next to it. My 50th book could be one that has an A and it'll have a 50 next to it. I am going to coordinate a number here with a number of a book on the index. But what happens if I read over 60 books? I'm drawing a teeny tiny moon, just a little satellite next to 60. If we have multiple books over 60, which I highly doubt, I will just draw little moons to indicate that I read however many moons over 60 that I read. All right, I'm connecting all of these together with a marker to make it look like we are traveling from one planet to the next. You're also going to see me color in any book frame boxes with a color throughout this setup. I got really tired of them just being blank until I put in a book cover to indicate that I had filled in that space. I'm going to do that all the way through the journal anytime I have a spot waiting for a book cover to be put in there. Then it's time to decorate. I promise y'all, there's no rhyme or reason to any of this. Some of you are going to look at it and go, yeah, Beth, it's quite obvious there's no rhyme or reason. But I do get questions all the time when I'm just doing these fiddly, scrapbooky styles about how I make up my mind, where I'm going to put what where. And it really is all just about how I feel about that thing in the moment and where I want to put it. That is it for my Goodreads challenge. Kind of. If y'all watched my planning video for my reading journal, there was a lot of discussion about tracking genre. I am going to track genre on this page by coloring each one of these circles a different color depending on the genre that it is. I'm creating myself a cheat sheet, and that's what this blank page is. We're going to create a flip out in the back. I'll have a flip out in the front, and I'll have a flip out in the back. Let's go ahead and add those colors and things to this little flip out now. It's going to have a key for a couple of different areas around the journal. For example, the first thing I'm drawing is a little gold Saturn. What I intend to do with that little gold Saturn is mark in my index which one of the books that I read were a library book. I'll just put a little gold Saturn next to it. I also have a key for my backlist on which books I read and which books I DNF'd. I'll fill it in a solid black if I read it. I'll put an X in it, like an X-Man symbol, if I DNF'd it. That was a suggestion by one of my viewers, so thank you very, very much. Then we are going to have my series tracker, which we'll get to in a little bit. If I've already read the book before 2025, those are going to be colored in with black. If it's after 2025, we're going to use the same color that I've been using as the highlights so that I can remember which one that is. That one's easy to remember since I have it labeled, but what am I going to do about the rest of these colors? I have this bag from Galen Leather, and I have picked a whole bunch of Ohuhu markers that I don't use very often for other things. And I am going to use this bag and these Ohuhu markers as my constant, these are the markers for my reading journal bag. We have a teal color for classics, purple for fantasy, dark green for folk and myth, yellow for general fiction, red for graphic novel, kind of a yellowy mustard color for historical fiction, a blue for memoir, an orange for mystery, a different blue for nonfiction, a dark purple for poetry, pink for romance, light green for science fiction, and an orange for thriller. In addition to coloring in the bubble, underneath each bubble I am putting it a Ohuhu number. Under classic, it says number 60. Under fantasy, it says number 16. Folk and myth is number 67. You get the idea. I will have my Galen Leather bag of book journal markers. I'm going to highlight some of the headers because I felt like they just needed something else. And since we're calling it a highlight, we're going to use the highlight marker. And then it's time to go ahead and decorate this so that we can then get it stuck in. Again, I just reached up, grabbed a random washi tape. I'm telling y'all, there's no purpose or thought process in which one of these washi tapes I used on which pages. I'm also calling this little pop out my AI because it's going to keep my head straight all the way through the year on what colors and symbols I need to use where in this journal. We're going to need that AI because otherwise I would absolutely 1000% forget. There are some other things that we are going to stick back here in the back of this journal. I'm going to stick that off to the side for just a minute. Move the elastic strap out of the way and let's get this card tipped in. And it is going to go in like this so I can see the AI title on the front and then it'll flip out where I can see the rest of my code on the back of that card. And again, these are just really skinny pieces of regular old invisible Scotch tape that I'm using to tip this in. While we're back here, let's go ahead and set up this year at a glance. This is going to be my how many days of the year did I read tracker, just like 2024. This year I am titling this the Captain's Log. This is where I'm going to keep track of my daily reading habit. I don't track the hours that I read. I don't track how many chapters I read. This is literally just a yes, no. Did you read on this day in 2025? And so far, I don't want to jinx it because I'm doing this voiceover on December 14th, the same day this video needs to go up. And I have read every day of 2024, so we don't want to mess it up in the next 15 days. But it is just your normal, everyday, average, grid style year at a glance. I have a column for every month if you've never seen a year at a glance. and a row for every day. And then those blocks at the bottom are cutting off the days, like that tall one is February because it only has 28 days. And then the small ones are those that have 30 days. And then the long clear ones are the ones that have 31. And that's it. It's a yes or no. I can fill in the block for yes and leave it blank for no. We're going to go ahead and put this in here and start adding in some decoration. And of course, I stuck in one of my favorite spaceships, and that is Serenity from the television show Firefly. Then I'm going to color in these boxes with a hot pink. I went ahead and put a little bubble with a hot pink and then a 53 below it to tell me which number that is. And that marker will also live in my bag. I will probably come back and put something on this pocket page to make it prettier because it just doesn't blend in with everything else now. It just needs a little washi tape wallpapering or something on it. But let's go ahead and flip back to our goals page. And again, I now have a solution for keeping all of the colors straight when I also use this as a genre tracker. I do need one more companion spread to this one, and that is my backlist. So we're going to go ahead and turn the page and get ready to set up my backlist, which is just going to be a list of a whole bunch of book covers of books that I own that I have not yet read. These are not all of the books that I own that I have not yet read, but it's a good chunk of them. I have here 24 book covers. They are in no particular order. They're just all mishmashed in there together. We're going to go ahead and put them into this journal in a super fun way, or at least it's going to be a super fun way for you. It takes a whole lot longer for me. Some of these have been on my backlist from year to year to year, and others of them are completely new. It's always fun for me to just toss them up in the air and see where they fall. Now, I filmed this setup a month or two ago, over a few days, and in the course of that, I decided to read not one, but two of the books that are on this page. I have now read John Green's Anthropocene Reviewed, and I have now read Kaigei. I'm going to have to pick two more books and cover up those book covers with two other book covers before 2025 starts. In addition to the half moon circle under each one of the books where I'll indicate whether I read it or didn't read it or DNF'd it, I have decided to outline each one of the book covers with a black marker. I wasn't super precious about it, but it did give it a little bit more contrast to help with the page. And then of course I'm naming this page Kryptonite because yeah, it's pretty obvious why I named this one Kryptonite. As we get closer to 2025, I'm going to put up a blog post that has all of these book covers on it. I do need to determine which other two books I'm going to replace since I've now read two of these, but such is the life of a mood reader. Let's go ahead and move on to my haul page, the books that I acquire in 2025 and how I want to track those. This is going to be a really simple grid chart style over 2 pages because I've determined that I do need 2 pages. I keep trying to rein in my book buying and acquiring, but I do need to. I haven't had to jump to extra ones yet, so I think I'm keeping it, kind of under control. But all I track is the title, the date, and the format. Those are the 3 columns on each side. And then I use an icon under the format. A little angled rectangle stands for physical book, just because it looks like a physical book. Sounds like a symbol for an audiobook. I draw a little gift box if somebody gifts me a book. Then I draw a little digital symbol for an ebook. Of course, I'm going to highlight every other line just to make it easier for me to fill in and stay on track and help my eyes out as well. That's the simple setup for my haul page. I am going to title this one another Star Trek reference, First Contact. It makes sense that this is my first contact with this new read. This page has one of my favorites on it, and that is the Battlestar Galactica. And yes, I did recolor all of these to make them match these bright pinks, purples, blues that I am using in this setup. This whole thing is wildly outside of my comfort zone because most of my last journal setups have been very vintage and throwback and browns and dark colors and that sort of thing. Having these colors is new to me, but I don't hate it. I'm enjoying it. Let's set up the book release radar. This is where I'm going to put books that I anticipate coming out. I am completely changing this setup Before, I used to have it separated out by month. I'm going to use essentially an Alistair method style tracker from the bullet journal method. On the left, we'll have title and author. On the right side of the spread, there will be a column for each of the months, January through December. And then I'll also have a column for 2026 where I can put in the month and the date from 2026 that a book could possibly be coming out. In the past, I had January and 3 or 4 spots I could write a book. February, 3 or 4 spots that I could write that a book was coming out. This time, we're just putting it in so that if I find out a book comes out, I can put in 13 under March to tell me that it's coming out March 13th. Or I can put in a 31 on October to say it's coming out on Halloween. That sort of thing. That's how this is going to work. I'm titling it Dratus because that's the word for radar in Battlestar Galactica. I'll get this filled in at some point because I do have some books coming out in 2025 that I know about, and we'll show you how this is going to function and work. All right, let's go ahead and move on to my series tracker. This is another one that I have radically simplified to make it work for me as far as space constraints and just make it a whole lot easier to navigate. Instead of making a boxy grid that has series, title, author title, lots of little squares, I've just gone with the series name and bubbles for the books. Each one of these should only take up 2 rows and then skip a row and then 2 rows and then skip a row. I know by the title of the series who the author is. I just felt like it was redundant. I didn't necessarily need to put the author in here. It also leaves me space on the end of each row to draw another bubble if another book comes out. This includes book series that are actively in progress. Those that I've finished are moved into my Notion database, so I don't keep everything that I've ever read in here. And then I've pulled out my current reading journal for reference so I can fill in these bubbles. What we're going to have on here so far is the Invisible Library series, Outlander, Witcher, Emily Wilde, Sworn Soldier, Wayfarers, Locked Tomb, Amina El-Sarafi, Expanse, Forever Desert, Threads of Power, Sandsea, Red Rising, and Atlas. I need to add in Will of the Many because I've now read that since I created it, so it'll get added to as we go along. The black circles are the books that I've already read. The open circles are the ones that I need to get to. Some of these are iffy, and I just didn't quite get to the point where I was going to DNF it yet. I'm not entirely positive I'm ever going to finish the Outlander books. I'm not entirely positive I'm going to read Red Rising or the rest of the Atlas books. So that's just where we are on my series tracking. I am naming this page the Multiverse for obvious reasons. It's a great sci-fi name for this page. Then of course we're just adding in the decoration. A sticker here, a sticker there, a star here, a star there, constellation, whatever fits. I do eventually print out a bunch of little flying books and add them into my spreads. All right, let's talk about Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. So last year, I set up a spread in my reading journal to keep track of The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb and getting all the way through that series. We're going to do the same thing for Cosmere, but of course it's far more convoluted and complicated than Realm of the Elderlings is because you don't read them all in order. Here I have all of my book covers for Brandon Sanderson ready to go, and we're going to color code the order in which I want to read these things and mark in the ones that I've already read. I'm giving these 4 major categories: Mistborn, Stormlight, Secret Projects, and Standalone. There's a lot of different things that I have folded into Standalone. And of course, not all of his other novels fit into the Cosmere. Not all of the Secret Projects fit into the Cosmere. You can see off to my left that I have a cheat sheet. I had to make a cheat sheet to figure out how to go through this. How did I decide what order I wanted to read them in? Because there are a lot of people on the internet with a whole lot of opinions, and one of them is the author himself, because of course it is. Brandon Sanderson released a video on his YouTube channel in the fall of 2024 because the new book was coming out and made a suggestion of maybe this is the way that you want to read these things. And that's the video that I used, tweaked a couple of things, but mostly stuck with his recommendation. It's logical, right? Go to the source. Go to the source. You don't have to listen to all the fan people out there who think they know better than everyone else does. I have already read the first 3 Mistborns, and I have already read Warbreaker. Incidentally, that is the order in which Brandon Sanderson basically said you should start, was those 4. I just happened to have done it without getting his advice. Now, I had started Way of Kings and was really having trouble with it. I put it on the back shelf for a little bit. That gives me time to get into Tress of the Emerald Sea and Elantris and Arcanium Unbounded. Then I can come back to Way of Kings. He even suggests, because the Stormlight books are so massive, that maybe you read other things in between them. So I've gone ahead and colored in those first 4, and then I've given all of the books a little bit of a shadowy halo with the color that fits with the category where I have them assigned. I guess I could have left this titled Cosmere, but I did make it Cosmology, which, is close enough. Still keeps the science fiction name in the mix. We're adding in, again, our bits and bobs and our decorations around the page. In between doing this page and coming back to this very moment here is when I turned off the camera, created a whole page of little open flying books, and I'm coming back in to pepper them in and around my setup. Just felt like something was missing. I've put one there. I'm now looking at the index to see if I want to stick any of these little flying books anywhere in and around these pages. Just having those moments of indecision, and this needed a little something else, and what do I want to put here? And I do like that I have added these little books here and there to the pages where I just felt like something was missing. I landed on the little flying books because I had used them on my 2025 cover page, where I had added in some flying books coming through space along with the planets and the comets and all of that sort of thing. They were already in my setup. I just hadn't brought them through the other pages, and it's one of those things that just began to tie everything together. If you haven't figured out, despite the limited space, in my reading journal, I definitely adopt a mentality of more is more. So again, the books just fed into that mentality and gave me something else to put on the page. Just because I set up a Cosmere tracker does not mean I'm abandoning my Realm of the Elderlings tracker, and that's what's going in here. We're going to replicate this page here on the left so that I can continue tracking Realm of the Elderlings as well. And again, y'all don't need to see me stick these all in, so we're just going to toss them up in the air and let them land where they fall. The big difference here is that you read the Realm of the Elderlings in publishing order. So the Farseer trilogy goes together, the Live Ship trilogy goes together, the Tawny Man trilogy goes together, the Rainwild Quintet goes together, and then the Fitz and the Fool trilogy goes together, and you read them in that order. They're not all mixed in together like Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. I read Assassin's Apprentice in 2023, and then this year I read Royal Assassin and Assassin's Quest. I have started Ship of Magic 2 or 3 times, and I think maybe it's just the audiobook that's not working for me, or I'm confused. I can't get into it. I'm having a little bit of a struggle, so I may need to buy the physical books for the Live Ships series this year and try to do that with a physical book. Otherwise, I don't know that I'm ever going to get past it. Like, I have to get past it somehow, but we'll find out how that works out. I'm also putting a little colored box around each one of the series just to indicate that they go with one another, especially since Rainwild, to fit it on the page, goes down the right side as opposed to being in order with the other ones. I am writing in the series name for each one, and then we can get to decorating, and again, just using the regular old washi tape. I am titling this page TARDIS because it's bigger on the inside. I'm also going to move on to this page on the right. This is just going to be a recommendations page. I really debated whether I was going to put one of these in or not. It's been one of those things that I really don't write a whole lot of them down over the course of the year, but I do put in a few. So this grid should be fine. Just has title and from. Those are the only 2 columns I have. I've titled it Uncharted, because these are books that other people have recommended to me that I've not read yet, that I might be interested in taking that journey or that voyage. All right, that's a lot of pages, but I'm not done yet. I have other things to do, and we're entering into the section of the reading journal where everyone's going to say, who is she? What is she doing? What is she up to? Because I have added in some things that seem contradictory to some of my previous reading habits. And this first page comes from reviewing my past reading journals during that planning video that I did in the very first reading journal I had set up. I had set up a page for based on. So it was a page for me to record television shows or movies that I was watching that were based on books. And I thought, well, that was fun. But if you, again, watch that video, you know I didn't really use that journal. That was the first one that didn't really get used very well. I didn't give myself a lot of space. But on the left side of this spread, we are going to do the based on spread. And it'll just be the title of what I'm watching, the year that it came out. I gave myself a teeny tiny column to put in a star rating and the date that I watched it. It doesn't matter when it came out or when it was released. If I watch Pride and Prejudice 5 times over the course of the year, it's going to get put in here 5 times because that's go. On the right, we have a page for my book club. I'm part of a bring your own book club. We're not reading a specific book. We just show up and talk about whatever it is we're reading. I wanted a space to remind myself what I talked about each month. On the left, we have the dark side. That is my based on spread. And on the right, we have Hive Mind. That is my book club spread, where I can jot down the book that I take to my Bring Your Own book club each month in 2025. There is that based on spread as well as the book club spread. But wait, there's more. Let's move on to a couple of more pages of exciting things, not exciting things. You tell me. On this page, we're going to set up a spread for a reading challenge that I'm going to host. More on that later. And several pages of other reading challenges that I've decided to, let's say, tap into. I don't think I'm going to finish either one of them. I don't think that I'm going to use them as rule of law, as this is something that I have to read in this month at this time, but I just wanted to use them as guidance. Here on the left, we are setting up a page that we're just going to call the Shakespeare Code. I'll talk to y'all more about that tomorrow. On the right, I've decided to partake in the Hardcore Literature Book Club. I went ahead and created the title page and everything here because I'm filming this at like the beginning of November and this list was not out. It is now out. I'll show you that during the flip through at the end. But I went ahead and committed myself to it before I knew what books that Benjamin was going to pick because I like to read classics. And I just wanted to see what it's all about, but I don't want to join it hardcore for the Hardcore Lit Book Club. You get what I mean. I titled those 2 pages Shakespeare Code and then the Red Pill because it's so out of context for me to want to join a reading challenge. And then not 1, but 2. Oh wait, there's more. So this double spread is for the Pop Sugar Challenge for 2025, which is a little more palatable because it's things like a book with a snake on the cover. There's 50 prompts for that. Right now, this page is going to be blank. We'll talk about it here in the flip through in just a second. I really do wonder if I haven't completely lost my mind, but there you go. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next spread. This is going to be a fun one that I'm adding to my year-end review type of thing. But the year-end, I always do my favorite book of the year, and I just feel like some of my books get left out. So we are going to do a Hall of Fame, and I have 10 different categories that I have created that I just thought would be fun throughout the year to then come back and look at everything that I've read and assign one of the books to one of these categories. I am going to put book covers in here so you see me creating those spots. Also color those in just to make them not be white over the course of the year while I'm waiting to fill them in. My categories are Best Literary Love Letter to a City, Best Book for Rainy Day Blues, Most Likely to Become a Broadway Musical, Most Likely to Be on a Witch's Nightstand, Best Book to Read in a Coffee Shop, Most Likely to be Quoted at Dinner Parties, Best Book to Read when you need to feel brave, Most Likely to Spark an Existential Crisis, Likely to win a culinary award for Best Food Descriptions, and most likely to make you ugly cry in public. The super fun thing about a spread like this is if you are a hyper-specific genre reader, like you only read romance, then you can create categories of best kiss or best enemies to lovers romance. Make up your own categories. You do you. Have a whole lot of fun with it. If you decide to do something like this, let me know what some of your categories are in the comments below. I would love to know. I might want to use them for next year. Let me know if you want to see a video at the end of the year of me picking these categories. I'm not quite sure how I would film that. I'd have to figure that out. I named this page Area 51 because they're special. They're unique. They're locked away for more scientific study. I don't know. It just felt like the best title for this particular page. Now that we've set up the Hall of Fame, it's time for us to set up my spread for my best book of the year. In the last couple of years, I've only put in 8 to choose from. I didn't have one for every month. I don't necessarily need one for every month, but I wanted more than 8. We do set this up with 12, but I'm not going to pick one a month. I'm going to pick my favorite 12, however they turn out. I had to figure out how to design this page to get 12 down to 1, still fit my book covers in because I just love the book covers and the way that they look. So this is going to look a little convoluted at first, but trust me, it makes sense. We are putting in all of the book covers one. It all works out, and I'm going to color code it to make it easier for my brain and your brain and everybody's brain to figure out what's happening on this page. With the base structure in place, let's go ahead and start the color coding. I'm doing this yellow one here. And for each box where a cover is going to go, I'm also coloring its corresponding like data dot the same color as well. So yellow is going to be for the book of the year. Then I'm jumping up and I'm doing the blues. The blues are the original 12 favorite books that begin the process of elimination. I place those on the top row and a few of them on the bottom row to then start bringing them towards the center as we narrow it down to a favorite book. Not all of the books that I pick as a favorite are necessarily my 5-star reads. So for example, this year I read The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. While I had some issues with the mechanics, I really loved the content of the book. It might end up in my top books. I haven't quite decided yet, but that's the type of scenario where you might have a book that you love, but it could have been written maybe a little bit better. That's the type of book that could make it into this without being a 5-star read. Here you can see we're starting to narrow down. The blues narrow down to the pinks, and then the pinks narrow down to the 3 darker greens. I'm going to add in a light green to give us a 4th here. This is a wild card. I get to pick any book I want to, even if it's already been eliminated, and stick it into that spot. Then we come down to the purples, and the purples lead to the yellow for my favorite book of the year. And the title of this page is 42, because if you know, you know. It's the meaning of life and everything else. And therefore, my favorite book of the year would land on this page. This is one of the reasons that I've been coloring in the book cover slots all the way through the journal. It's because I didn't want this page to look like a big white page. All right, we're going to flip to the back. I'm going to do one more thing back here, and that's start a spread for books that I did not finish. And I talked about this throughout the course of the year, and I talked about it in my planning video for this, that I wanted a better way to keep track of the books that I do not finish and put a little bit of information in there on why I didn't finish the book, what was wrong with it, all of those sorts of things. And so we're going to start those from the back, moving towards the front. I don't DNF a whole lot of books by comparison. And for fun, we're titling this Red Shirt. Again, you Star Trek fans know that those with a red shirt always die. So this is my DNF page. What I've decided to do is to give a third of a page to each one of the DNFs. I'm going to go ahead and put in book covers. I'll put in a dividing line between the pages, and that's how we're going to start out. I don't yet know what my format entry is going to look like until I start using the pages, but at least I've given myself a framework to work within when it comes time for me to use those. All right, let's jump into the future. Here we are, we're all set up, ready to go, ready to do a little bit of a walkthrough, show you some of the things that I've added since the challenge prompts and things have come in as well. We're going to start here in the back where we ended, And of course, I have this spread set up to start doing my DNFs, the books that I did not finish. I can bring them in this direction. I do have penciled in 3 more spots. Not going to fill those in unless I absolutely have to. And then, of course, we have the Captain's Log, or my Did I Read Every Day of the Year spread, as well as my AI spread, which is just my cheat sheet for all of the different colors and things I have happening in this journal. I did go ahead and bring in some Celestial washi tape on this pocket just to give this page a little more something, since all of these others were decorated. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put this elastic strap on here, and we're going to flip back to the beginning where I have my cover page. This is my What's in a Star. I'm going to read through all of these in case you couldn't read them during the setup. Half star is deeply flawed. 1 star is very disappointed. 1.5 stars is significant flaws. 2 stars below average. 2.5 stars mediocre. 3 stars decent. It's a fairly good read. I like it. 3.5 is good. 4 is very good. 4.5 is excellent. And 5 is outstanding. I do have a couple other little notes under each one to help me clarify those ratings. And speaking of ratings, of course, everyone's now been introduced to my Reads rating system. Even though I created it, it is still new to me, so I gave myself a cheat sheet in the front of my journal to remind me of all of the different things that fit within each category. The math I can do on my own, but I just needed to be able to read over some of these categories from time to time if I need a refresher in my mind as I'm rating a book. That video was yesterday. There's a corresponding free printable that you can go and grab if you're interested in also following the Reads method for rating your books. Okay, this is Station 11, or I would call it Station 12 because we have 12 reads for the year. These are going to be our short story reads. So 2 years ago, our short story reads were Edgar Allan Poe. Last year, our short story reads were Grimm's Fairy Tales. I have picked 12 short stories that are science fiction by female authors. So this is what we're going to fill in here, and I'm going to show you what the January read is when we get a little further on in the journal. This, again, is my index. A couple of things on the index. I do have this little moon satellite, as I stated, that will be a alphabet challenge. So if I read a book that starts with A, we'll go ahead and fill that in. And then I also have this little gold Saturn. It says library, indicating that if I put this symbol next to any one of the books, that's a book that I got from the library as opposed to purchasing. And of course, the index does fold out as such for plenty of space. Here's my prime directive, or my goals for the year. I'm not going to read back through these, but they are here. This is where I'm going to fill in my Goodreads count, which I have set at 60 for 2025. Again, this is my kryptonite page, or those books that I've had on my shelves for a while that I've not yet read. One of the things that I did not mention in the voiceover is that some of these are audiobooks, and I did stick on top of the cover. So like right here on Parable of the Sower, there's a little black symbol with a purple like megaphone. That means that's an audiobook that I own, not a physical book. So The City We Became is also an audiobook. There's a couple of them in here. Wizard of Earthsea. Yeah, so there's just a few that are audiobooks, and I wanted to stick some sort of emblem on them to notate that. I am going to need to change out John Green's The Anthropocene Reviewed, as well as Kaikie, because I've now read both of those books, so look forward to those in my December wrap-up. This is my haul page for books that are coming into my life in 2025. And this, again, is my release radar. So, title, author, I have a P for pre-order. So if I pre-order this book, I'm going to indicate that in this tiny little column here. And then I have January through December. So if a book comes out on January 2nd, I'll put the book title, the author, and on January, I'll put a 2, so that I know that it comes out January 2nd. If a book is coming out in 2026, Here I have 4 columns, so I can write, say, 0201 for February 1st of 2026. And then if I read any of these books, I have a check mark here, so I can indicate whether, they were on my radar, they were highly anticipated, but did I actually pick them up and read them? Here's a very simplified series tracker for 2025. We're going to see if it works for me. I think it's going to be fine. Normally, I would have segregated boxes with each series and the author name and just a little bit more detail. So this is just series name and then a bubble for each book. The black bubbles are the ones, of course, that I've already read. And my foray into Brandon Sanderson. We'll see if I pick up Trust of the Emerald Sea this year. I don't own it, so I'd have to buy it and see if I continue going through the Cosmere. I do intend to continue going through Robin Hobb. Like I said, if y'all have read Ship of Magic and the Live Ship Traders, let me know if anybody else has had a hurdle on this book and what I may need to do to get over that hurdle. Similarly, if you've seen some of the books that I've read and you know of another book that you think Beth might like, go ahead and recommend it down in the comments below, and I might toss it here on my Uncharted page, which is my recommendations. And then we're moving into what the hell was Beth thinking? No, but this is sort of the media side of my reading. So if I watch a television show or a movie that has been based off of a book, regardless of when it came out, doesn't have to be brand new. Even if it's a rewatch, I can go ahead and put it on this spread here. This, of course, is my book club spread, and this is for a bring your own book club. So we don't have a specific book that we have to read every month, but I want to remember which book I take to talk about, because I typically read more than one book in a month, and I just kind of have to pick one every time I go to book club to be the one that I want to talk about and highlight. Because if we all talked about all of the books that we read over the course of the month, we'd never get out of there. We'd be there for 5 or 6 hours. I haven't populated this. We're going to talk about it in a video tomorrow. I've hinted at it a lot. Many of you have asked for it, and there are other people on the internet that do Shakespeare read-alongs, but I've heard you, and I've kind of been itching to do my own reread of Shakespeare as well, so we're going to start that in 2025. We're not going to read all of Shakespeare in 2025, but we are going to start it, so stay tuned for the next video. And then, of course, again, with the who is she, what is she doing? She doesn't like traditional book clubs, and now she's trying book challenges. Yeah, I don't know. But I have the Red Pill, which is the hardcore literature book club by Benjamin McAvoy. And I'm going to use just as a guide to help me read some classics that are not Shakespeare related. This is going to be a little bit interesting because I read Rebecca last year. I read The Curious Case of Jekyll and Hyde this year. I reread Emma last year. And I'm trying to decide, if I've read it in the last year, do I really want to pick it up and read it again? I don't know the answer to that. There are plenty of books on this list that I have not read. In fact, there's lots of them. 100 Years of Solitude I've not read. Metamorphosis I've not read. Madame Bovary I've not read. Sound and the Fury I read, but I try to block Faulkner out of my brain, so I might reread it, I might not. Canterbury Tales I'm very familiar with because it was part of my degree plan. Brave New World I've kind of avoided on purpose. 1984 I've not read. I have read the Odyssey and the Iliad. I have read Three Musketeers. I have not read Finnegan's Wake. And then, of course, I won't know what The Secret Dickens is until December of next year. The thing about the Hardcore Literature Book Club is if you want to be part of what he calls the lectures and being able to get the printable and all of those things, that's a $20 a month Patreon pledge. And I'm not into that right now. I just have too many other things going on to pledge $20 to a book club kind of situation. But he does tell you at the beginning of December what all the books are going to be for the next year. So I've jotted them down. And I'm going to use it as a guideline. I might choose to read Canterbury Tales in a completely different month than Hardcore Literature Book Club is, if you see what I'm saying. It's like Captain Jack Sparrow and the Pirate Guidelines. Nothing is set in stone. Similarly, I have put in all of the prompts for the Pop Sugar 2025 reading challenge. I have shortened them. A lot of them begin with a book about a book about, and I didn't write that phrase over and over and over again. Want to read based on the last sentence, which is fascinating because y'all know I keep my first lines journal, which we're going to peek at here in a minute. I don't keep a last lines journal. I keep a first lines journal. A book about a cult, a book under 250 pages, a book about a food truck. When you hit the 40 mark, there's a bonus section. And so I changed color and made it a little bit different. And the bonus section has categories that you choose from, easy, medium, or hard. So I've also categorized those. So like oldest author in your TBR pile is easy because you can figure that out. Hard would be a married couple living apart. I mean, do I know a book off the top of my head about a married couple living apart? I do not. So yeah, so that's 50 prompts for Pop Sugar. And I thought I'd put it in here and look back and see how many of them I hit. Am I going to use these prompts to help me pick my books? Probably not. I'm too much of a mood reader for that. Again, it's a guideline just to see how far along I get in a challenge without making any real effort on it. And then we move into my new favorite spread, I think, and that is choosing to have a Hall of Fame. And I read through all of these categories when I was setting it up. I'm not going to read through them again, but it is a favorite that I have added. And then, of course, we have my book bracket for 2025. And we'll see. I love the fact that I gave myself a wild card. So if something gets knocked out of the book bracket, I can pull it back in if I want to. Or I could just pull in a completely different book if I wanted to and see where it lands there before getting to the favorite book. And that's going to take us into January. And I've decided to not do any sort of elaborate cover spread from month to month. I have printed myself headers. So this is January, and it has a CH1 for chapter 1 on it. Our read for January is going to be Captive Girl by Jennifer Pelland, and I'm just going to read the Goodreads blurb. It says, in this brilliant dark science fiction story from her collection Unwelcome Bodies, Nebula-nominated Jennifer Pelland confronts the handicap that is normality. Alice watches the skies with two other saviors of humankind, children who were altered into monsters to save a space colony from an attack like the one that killed Alice's parents. Alice lives in slavery to duty and machines, yet she's content, supported by the love of her minder, Dr. DeVoe Marika. Then the program is shut down, and Alice is forced to return to normal human functionality. Loss of purpose, loss of time, loss of her machines. I haven't read any of the 12 stories that I have picked for this science fiction read-along, so I'll be reading them with you for the very first time. This one was written in 2006. It has 7,111 words, so it's about, 24 pages long as far as books are concerned. I made sure to select stories that had some sort of open source location. Either they were published in an online science fiction magazine, so we can read the stories there, or I can download a PDF. Those will all be linked for you down below so that you can find those. So this is what our reading for January is going to look like. I left myself then space for the Shakespeare read-along for January. So a little preview there that's going to be All's Well That Ends Well. Space of other things that I'm reading, and then just reading recap. So I'll write in here the number of books that I read in January, the number of pages, the format, and then my average reads rating for the month. I don't know if I'll put anything else in here. I've left space for thoughts on Captive Girl here. I've left myself an empty star rating so I can fill that in as well. And then we'll start putting in my January reads here. Now, if you watched my planning video, brainstorming what I wanted to put in here, you know that I'm probably going to run out of space. And I just decided to hell with it. And I went back, and in my reading journal setup for 2024, I had even said I might run out of space, and if I do that, I'll just jump into a new journal. And then I got really worried about the space the closer and closer to the year end that it got. And I've decided to take my own advice, and I'm just going to jump into a new journal. And then we will reevaluate whether I move into a Sterling ink or a Hobonichi. It would probably be a Sterling ink TN size notebook that I moved into just to get some more pages and things. But I don't know. You know, I love my Archer and Olive notebooks specifically for my reading journal. But if we're starting to get to the point where I always need to, then I might jump into something that has more pages. But I'm just not going to worry about it. I don't have another TN that I like in my lineup that matches the sci-fi theme. I specifically bought this because I already knew I wanted to do a sci-fi theme for 2025 when this one came out in the summer of 24. So I should have bought two, I guess, but I only bought the one. If you have one of these you want to sell, let me know. I can buy it from you. Okay, so as we've talked about, I also have my First Lines journal. And I don't have anything to set up in it. I've already done it. We're just going to peek at it. Here she is. So like I stated, I'm currently reading KissUSA. So here is the first line of KissUSA. It's December. I'm not going to fill in all of this. As you can see, I'm fitting 4 or 5 on a page. There's no way I'm going to read 4 or 5 more books between now and the end of the year. So I went ahead and put in my corresponding cover page here so that my first lines for 2025 can start after this page. Here's all my first lines for 2024. Here's our cover page for 2025. And again, I made it complement what I have here so that we can start recording our first lines for 2025. So that is it, y'all. There's my reading journal set up with the First Lines journal as well for 2025. I'm super excited about it. Every time I open it up, the colors make me super happy. They're wildly bright and brilliant, more than any of my other reading journals have been. Let me know in the comments below if you're interested in our science fiction short story read along, and if you would like to join in with us for that for 2025. I'd love to have you join us. If you like this video, you know what to do. Hit that thumbs up button. It really does help my channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'd love to have you join the Beth and Beyond family, and I will catch you in the next one.